What's up everybody and welcome to another edition of AGR's Pop Culture Reviews. And say it isn't so! Is it actually possible that Netflix is going to be canceling Stranger Things? It seems like they're canceling all the really great shows, or at least my favorite shows, which really sucks. And I think that's actually going to affect their subscribers because most people are already rumbling that they might actually cancel their Netflix subscriptions. So let's see what happens. Hopefully we have at least one more season. Well, despite the bad news that this show is possibly going to be cancelled, we have at least one more season to tie everything up. So let's get right into this season. This is my official review of Stranger Things Season 3. Let's take a closer look. Since the beginning of the series, every season has had a certain theme in one way or another. Now this one is actually pretty unique and kind of a milestone for the characters. It's definitely about the transition of turning into teenagers or young adults, whatever you want to call it. Now this is Stranger Things, so you do have the usual real monsters in the show and the uneasiness of what's going on in Hawkins, but there's also a lot of metaphor and symbolism here, definitely several layers of subtext, and a lot of it has to do with the uneasy transition into adulthood and facing the fear of having to cast aside childish things in order for you to grow up. This season is so interesting to see our favorite characters and how well they're written in terms of how they've grown up. But it's not just that, you also see the physical manifestation of this. Some of the characters have had incredible growth spurts, and the reality is they're teenagers now, having girlfriends and suffering the growing pains of turning into teenagers. Definitely think of all the characters that are going through this uneasy transition is definitely Will and Elle, and are probably the most prominent, Will having the most uneasy transition, but of course he is really the only one who knows what the hell's going on. As usual, Elle is really starting to come into her element as a teenager and exploring what it's like to be, semi-normal with superpowers. It was pretty cool to see how they kind of normalized the way Elle uses her superpowers, even in everyday mundane things. There's actually a couple of funny scenes this season that had my ass rolling when I saw them. It was really cool, and they're just dealing with the fact that she's a metahuman. There are several characters here that get a lot more screen time from previous seasons. One in particular I thought was awesome, and you're gonna remember her catchphrase, "Free ice cream for life," which was awesome. One aspect of this season that I really liked, and something that was in the back of my mind for several seasons now, is when they were gonna inevitably introduce the idea of the Cold War, and they certainly explore the 1980s Cold War, at least the Russian aspect in this season. It's so funny how this show takes place in the 80s, and yet it is so relevant today, and that's really a testament to the brilliance of the writing and in keeping up with current events. Now, of course, Stranger Things is known to be a mecca for 80s pop culture references, and I love all the Easter eggs. One in particular was the Die Hard reference, which was so awesome. They even referenced Back to the Future and kind of satirized it a little bit. The reference that really impressed me though was George Romero's Day of the Dead, and it's no coincidence that a good portion of this season takes place in and around the mall, and as you know from that film, it's really a criticism on American consumerism, particularly in the 80s, of excess and people just being greedy and whatnot. So I thought that was cool. It was a nice little reference, and it makes a nice statement about American consumerism. Though I do have to say, and I have to admit this, even Stranger Things, with its design being a lot of pop culture references, can take it a little bit too far. And I thought that the Never Ending Story reference was just freaky, weird, and out of place. It made absolutely no sense. It was really contrived in many ways, and I was like, what the hell is this? So come on guys, bring it back a little bit. I also really liked all of the character development here. A lot of these characters have had these very incredible and monumental arcs. One in particular that I thought was so fantastic and very poignant, and a conversation between two characters that works so well in terms of exploring sexuality. It's the kind of conversation I always wanted to have growing up as a teenager with my crush. It was so cathartic and I think so appropriate. They did it so well. This is definitely one of the goriest seasons we've seen so far, and I gotta give them props from the overall creature designs. They're definitely varied, and you can see that this is an homage to John Carpenter's The Thing. This season, the monsters look a lot more organic and steeped in a little more realism, I guess as real as it can be for Stranger Things. Now there is definitely a downshift in terms of the tone here. While it starts out with the first couple of episodes as basically teenage angst and a little bit more lighthearted, trust me guys, this show goes dark very quickly, and all the teenage angst and some of the things that they were worrying about as teenagers quickly goes away because they've got some real shit to deal with. The other thing too, I noticed that Elle is super powered in this season, and she's basically the Jean Grey of the show. There's also this really cool and awesome revelation as to where the people of Hawkins have gone, those who have gone missing this whole time. It's actually really cool, and I like the way that they introduced this. Again, it's going to go into spoiler territory, so I don't want to talk about it too much, but the revelation is a payoff in and of itself, and I thought it was awesome. Another interesting aspect of this season is that there's actually 3 separate storylines with different antagonists, and all of them converge into the same story at the end of the season. Unlike previous seasons, all the kids and the characters are not together. Instead, they have concurrent separate storylines, and again, the payoff is really cool. But of course, here's the thing, and this is why I was so freaked out when I heard that this show might be cancelled. This season definitely leaves you with more questions than answers, and it's by far the most emotional season yet. This one will kick you in the ass for sure. Guys, overall, Stranger Things Season 3 is really awesome. Even though there were a couple of missteps with the references, they got a little bit too gratuitous. You have to suspend some disbelief, especially with the Russian storyline, because, you know, that might actually not happen and maybe went a little bit too far. But the character development is great. I love the creature design. The overall story and arcs are fantastic. And of course, I can't wait to see what they do with Season 4, because there's definitely a cliffhanger here, and it was so interesting. I'm warning you now, Netflix, there's going to be a collective outcry if you guys do not finish Season 4 and explain what the hell that meant. Alright everybody, so that's my official review on Stranger Things Season 3. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews.